If you have any thoughts and concerns, questions about Childish Things from Supergirl season 1, feel free to drop those in the live chat, which the live chat already let me know that I had been muted. I had muted myself, just while I was working on some things behind the scenes. And then all of a sudden I went live and forgot to change it. So thank you, live chat, for correcting me on that. So if you have any thoughts about the episode, though, about Childish Things from season 1, any thoughts, comments, questions, concerns, drop those in the live chat as well. We'll also be doing snap judgments at the end of the episode of our live stream. So if you have any snap judgments that you want to do, we didn't do snap judgments. We didn't play snap judgments in season 1. So that is something that we can add to the Supergirl Radio Rewind aspect of discussing these episodes, is that we didn't have that until season 2. We came up with snap judgments in season 2 with the appearance of Snapper Carr, who never once snapped on the show, and snapping is a big part of that character's traits and identity and characterization, and they did not do it, not even once on the show, which is disappointing, which is also kind of strange for the Supergirl TV series, which I guess back then would have been the CBS TV series, because in season 1 it was quite faithful to the comic book characters and their stories. It was weird that in season 2 Snapper Carr never snapped, because if they wanted to be faithful to that character, that's what would have happened. Let's see. I do have one question in the chat asking how my day was. It was pretty good. There were some tornado watches in my neighborhood, in my area, so that was quite the eventful afternoon with a lot of rain and winds. So I came home early. So that's a good day. I have a lot of thoughts about the DC film news. A little disappointed on that front. So that put a little bit of a damper on my afternoon. That was worse than the tornado watch, to be honest. But but other than that, trying to have a good day. Every day is a good day if you choose to make it so. So I hope everyone else is having a good day as well. And I see Morgan in the behind the scenes area. If you're ready, just let me know. Okay. All right. I'm going to bring you on and make sure that you're not muted, because I see Morgan is muted, because I muted myself earlier and then I started the live and nobody could hear me on the live stream because I forgot to unmute myself.
It has happened to me so many times. So many times.
So many times. So I'm glad that we have a live chat to point out.
We can hear you.
I would have recorded a whole live stream and nobody would have heard it.
I think the audio version of our podcast is better when we're muted. just like soft silence, just like an hour of that.
It's really relaxing.
We're going for like a more of our experimental phase. This is more of our
What if you did an audio podcast that was just silence every episode?
What if
it was like episode 1 silence, episode 2 more silence?
What if we're like redefining the form? Have they considered that?
I would love to read the reviews that would come out about that podcast.
They're like, you know what? At first I was like, why is there no sound? And then I was like, I love that there's no sound. What if we just titled the podcast Silence? I really think that we're on to something here. This is gonna be our big podcasting break. Silence.
The reviews would be like thought-provoking.
I thought about my whole life during that silence.
Oh my gosh, that would be so funny. New Rachel says Supergirl Radio converts to an ASMR podcast. I don't know what
we just whisper everything and then like just like touch the mic. Would you like to listen to a nightmare? Here we are. We have like that's like our offshoot of silence. It's like the opposite of silence, where like the sound like settles into your body in like an unpleasant way. I don't like ASMR is what I'm saying.
I don't like ASMR either. I follow an Instagram account. Oh my gosh, I forget what the title, but it's It's Lenny, who's this lizard, and the girl who owns Lenny feeds him on her Instagram feed. Like she makes videos of feeding Lenny because it's really funny to watch this lizard eat these bugs and stuff. And sometimes she'll record it just to do the ASMR aspect of it, and just to hear him like chewing it. I'm like, this is so weird, but I kind of love it. I don't know why. So check out, it's something like Lenny the Lizard or something on Instagram. It's one of my favorite Instagram accounts. So I don't know if we're going to go to ASMR, but I think that the dual aspect of silence and then whatever we call the ASMR.
Yeah, I think we've got a winning idea on our hands because we can also create 2 legions of fans that like that want incredibly different things from our podcast, and maybe like start fighting with each other. I just want to start like,
what if you did a crossover episode?
Like the podcast version of like a shipping war where everybody's just mad at each other. They're like, no, I wanted the silence. And they're like, no, I need the tapping. This is $1 million idea.
It really is a good idea. I would be into that. Let's see. Okay. All right. So we have some comments and questions about the episode. So I guess we'll go ahead and get started. So Morgan, just to double check, you got the doc and everything.
I got it.
All right. So we will officially get started, and we will do a rewind of Childish Things.
Leslie Lar's downfall is just that eyebrow twitch that she can't help doing. Could you imagine if Hope was like, let's add that to the PowerPoint? Excuse me?
What year is it?
How old am I? This is how the podcast breaks up.
This is the last episode of Supergirl Radio. You want a Kryptonian? You got one.
Is it a movie about saving Argo? The answer to that one is no. It's called Witch for a Summer! Exclamation point. Where does she want to go? Ask her. Talk to her. Really commune with flat Supergirl.
Did we set the bar too high or too low?
I think we set the bar real medium.
You're doing an intensely adequate podcast.
Good.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Noyce, and you're listening to Supergirl Radio.
McGurk! I love
Not
typing.
mess with my Google Docs, Meeksy.
Supergirl Radio is going live every night of the week. How do you like it? Is becoming a human burrito a plus or a minus? I don't know. It does seem snug.
I mean, they say you are what you eat.
Kira.
I love that.
So I do a podcast called Supergirl Radio, and one of our segments is Lena Luthor, Boardroom or Ballroom. Because
she looks like a boss in this coat.
Nasty Luthor like a different Luthor? It's not just Lena being mean?
No.
Helen Slater here. So fun to know that you're hosting a podcast called Supergirl Radio.
Welcome to Supergirl Radio, your source for all things related to the CW Supergirl TV series and the character of Kara Zor-El. My name is Rebecca Johnson.
I'm Morgan Glennon.
And for this episode of the podcast, we are live and wired on the Supergirl Radio Facebook page and the DCTV Podcast YouTube channel to go back in time. Since Morgan didn't review Supergirl episodes as a full-time co-host of Supergirl Radio until World's Finest, which aired in March of 2016, we are revisiting the first season to get Morgan's thoughts. This week, we will be discussing episode 10 of season 1 titled Childish Things. And since we don't have any news to go over, I guess we should just go ahead, jump in the Legion Cruiser, go back to 2016, and talk about the first appearance of Toyman, because this is a pretty monumental thing. Toyman connected to several characters in the series. So I'm excited, Morgan, to get your thoughts on Toyman and this depiction of him. So I guess we will go back in time to 2016, and I'll see you back in the past. 2016, different time. It feels
different time. So long ago.
It feels weird being in the past, but here we are in January 18th, 2016. So here's the official description of Childish Things. Quote, Kara does her best to support Win when his father, the supervillain Toyman, breaks out of prison and seeks out his son for unknown reasons. Also, Kat offers Lucy a job at Catco, and Alex asks Hank to use his powers to help uncover Maxwell Lord's plans, unquote. It's interesting to me, just looking at the description here, that they are still referring to Jean as Hank in this description and not referring to him as Jean, even though he has already outed himself in the episode. So interesting. I don't know if this was Veronica in season 1 or if this is Veronica's counterpart at CBS. I think Veronica might have come in on the CW side. But
I think Veronica was on the CW side. This was like the CBS version of Veronica. I'm not sure. Betty, I guess.
Yes, let's go with Betty.
and Betty was like, listen, I know it's been revealed that he's Jean, but like let's keep this going in the description. Because like maybe somebody missed that episode and they'll be like, I don't know what's going on. The description didn't tell me.
Betty was really watching out for all of us. She was looking, she was looking out for those people who are weary of spoilers. She didn't want to give anything away. So
that's exactly it. Thank you, Betty.
Thank you, Betty, for that. So, Betty and Veronica doing their thing with the descriptions of these episodes. So this episode was introducing Toyman as a character within the Supergirl universe. So, Morgan, I'm curious, what were your thoughts on Toyman, Winslow Schott Sr., as played by Henry Cherney? What did you think about him?
I'm so excited that you looked up the correct pronunciation of his name, because I was like watching the episode and I was like, I can't wait to talk about Henry. And then I was like, I don't know how to pronounce his name. I knew that there were like C's and there were Z's and they were everywhere. And I was like, I can't do it. And then I told myself, I said, Morgan, you've got hours. You can just like find an interview. You'll know how to pronounce his name. You'll come prepared. For once in your life, you'll come prepared. And do you know that I did not watch those interviews? I did not look it up, and I was not prepared. But you were. So I really like him as the Toyman. I think he has really carved out a niche as an actor, as like the unpleasant father, the rich unpleasant father mostly. But this one he's slumming it a little bit. He's not super rich here, so that felt different for him. That was a new flavor for him, and I was like, I don't know, I prefer you rich. But because he was on the great show Revenge
that we always wanted to pull cast members from.
Yes, anyone from Revenge. Come on over. I really wanted Emily Van Camp to like come over, and you think that she's like a hero and she's part of the team, and then she hugs Kara and her eyes go dead and she just stares off into the middle distance, and then you see her like Xing out Kara's face in a picture, and it's like, revenge time. But she's on her vigilante-ish. Which would have been amazing. But I actually just watched a I mean, horror, I think, is kind of a light term for this movie. It was not really a horror movie, more like an action, kind of like a dark action comedy called Ready or Not, where he plays, again, the rich, awful father of a family and was incredible. And the premise of that movie is that, like, once somebody gets married and gets like inducted into the family, they have to play a game. But if they get randomly get assigned the wrong game, the game is basically like the most dangerous game,
Oh,
and the whole
this is
family
not.
hunts them.
Yeah, this is not worth it. I don't think you need to to be part of this family. I think you've got to get out of
No,
that family.
no, you're gonna want to get on out of there. But he was playing a very like he was playing to type in that movie. So when I saw him, I had forgotten that he was Toyman in this, and I was like, "Oh man, that poor guy has gotten typecast. I want to see that guy. I want to see that guy play a romantic comedy or something. Like, give that,
I think he could do it.
let that man do a Hallmark movie or something. I feel like he would bring like a menacing energy to the romantic comedy that might be fun and weird. Like, I don't know if I want her to get together with him. What's going on? So anyway, that was a long journey to say I do love Henry
Churney.
Churney.
Like churning butter is how I think about it.
And I thought he did a great job as Toyman in this one. I also like that they gave him like the glasses. He just seemed he has a good the actor has a good way of playing like an evil father where you do feel like he loves his children, just like not more than he loves like money or blowing up toys or etc etc. And I do feel like I felt like he cared about Win, but more as kind of like an extension of himself and his like own genius, and less of like an independent person who wants him to stop blowing up toys.
Well, he did tell Win that they were linked and that they were the same person, and that it would be okay if they went to jail as long as they went to jail together. So
Yeah.
that was his that was the most fatherly love I think that he really genuinely put into that, which was very creepy.
That was one of my favorite bits from the episode, because Win was like, well, like if I kill him in front of everybody, like they're gonna see me do it, they're gonna arrest me. And he's like, and it's gonna be great. Listen, I know you think to yourself prison is terrible, and mostly it is, but I started the best book club and you can pick the next book. Like, I just liked the idea of him thinking up all these like father-son activities that they're gonna do in prison. He's like, son, we can throw around a ball again. Win's like, I don't want to do that, Dad. I don't want to go to prison.
I don't want to kill someone. I don't want to go to jail, and I don't want to spend that time with you.
And like Toyman is like, well, you are being a little bit selfish right now.
Yeah, this Toyman actually had a lot of Easter eggs. So what I love about this episode, and what I love about this portion of season 1, is that they really tried to be very faithful to these characters and these adaptations. You see several creepy little dolls that are very Toyman-esque. He does wear the glasses that are very indicative of Toyman. He uses a throwing star yo-yo, so he has these toy gadgets. And one of the things I really loved, because when we did our Supergirl Radio character spotlight on Toyman a while back, I've got it linked in the video description below, and I'll have it in the audio podcast show notes. If you have not heard that, I really encourage you to listen to it, because we do go in depth about Toyman, and not just the Winslow shot version of Toyman. There are actually 3 versions of Toyman, and one of them is Jack Nimble, and he's a jester-like character, and that character shows up in the form of the little toy that gets brought to Win's desk at Catco that says something to the effect of, oh, meet at our favorite place, or whatever. So the show really made an effort to learn the history of the Toyman character and incorporate that into the episode, even if it was just through an Easter egg. So I really appreciated that it wasn't just them, in later seasons of the show, they would use comic book characters to present their agenda of the world to the audience. In my opinion, they would make it more about what they wanted to say and not what they wanted to tell about the character. And so season 1 is such a contrast to that. And so that it's one of the things that I find really special about season 1 is that they really made an effort to learn that comic book history and make sure that they knew what they were doing. So I even revisiting that, I relished in all of those Toyman-esque things that they put in there, because I think it helps inform the audience about some of that comic book history, even if they haven't dug into all of the Wikipedia sections like I have. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I really liked that they brought in some of the comic book lore, and it did feel like in season 1 at least, when they brought in characters. Now this is not only always true, and this episode is actually kind of a good example of the opposite. But often when they would bring in characters like Hank Henshaw or Win Shot, I remember before the show premiered, when we got the character breakdowns, it's like, oh, is he going to become Toyman? Oh, is he going to become, so I feel like they played with those expectations of like the comic book fans in the first couple episodes before they sort of revealed what they were actually doing with the characters, because I think there was a lot of like speculation, like, is Win going to go evil because of like this unrequited feelings for Kara? And I think in this episode is when they were like, no, like the Toyman is actually his father, that's the evil one, and like he's dealing with the repercussions of that. But I do think that it was nice that they had those comic book nods and kind of played with those expectations.
Yeah, they do settle that the real Toyman that everybody expects is Win's dad. But Win does in later seasons become a Toyman for for the Legion of Superheroes. If I remember correctly, he adopts the name for himself.
Yeah, I think
and
you're right.
The Toyman. Which is still kind of weird to me, but
he's redeeming
it makes sense. Okay.
He's taking it back.
He's reclaiming it and turning it on its head to be a positive thing instead of a menacing, evil, villainous killer of innocent people and children. So that, I guess, is a good thing in the end. But yeah, this Toyman I thought was great. And the only downside to it, and I guess this was because they didn't have the time or they couldn't get Henry Cherney back, or maybe they wanted to go in a different direction. They lost Callista Flockhart starting in season 2. So maybe they couldn't get to this. But there's a really famous story in the comics about how Toyman murders Cat Grant's son. And so that was one of the things that I always thought was a really big missed opportunity, that they could have gone there and had a really cool story with Cat, with Win, with Kara. And I guess because things changed so much with season 2, maybe they were going there, because they bring Cat's sons into the show.
They do.
And it just doesn't go there. And I guess, unfortunately, that was one of the things that got pushed when we went to the CW.
I feel like Supergirl, more than some like a lot of other shows, has had a lot of bumps along the road where you could see like maybe they were setting things up for like a season down the line, but then like the creative team changed, and so that got thrown out. We joke a lot about like the forgotten storylines and characters and things from Supergirl, but some of that, is because, say, season 1 to season 2, we go from CBS to the CW. We change filming locations. There's probably a lot of shuffling of like people behind the scenes and writers who didn't want to move to like Vancouver, and actors that they couldn't get. And then we have like a similar thing happening in season 3 where they had to scrape all of the plans that they had for the back half of the season very quickly, and we see a very similar thing happen with COVID. So this show has really not been lucky in a lot of ways, because behind the scenes stuff, I think, has often scuttled probably some cool plans that they had. It's like they planned, but the TV gods laughed. They laughed and laughed.
Yeah, they did have some problems, and I think that's thinking about the way TV is done now versus in well, I shouldn't say now, we're in the past.
Yes, this is
the-
2016.
The way the TV is done in the future.
This is 2016. What is a Disney Plus? What is an HBO Max?
What? Yes, I don't know what you're talking about. That's that it sounds great. I mean, an HBO Max sounds wonderful. I'm sure it has a great catalog of feature films and television programs. But I don't know.
Probably a lot of great programming is on there. I wouldn't know. I'm from the past.
But in the future, I think TV of the future has an advantage over something like a CBS's Supergirl because, say, with Netflix, they would be able to plan everything out. I'm thinking of things like The Crown, which is my current favorite television program, that they would have a plan. They're like, we're doing 6 seasons and this is what we're doing. Every 2 seasons, we're going to change the cast and we have this all planned out and this is where we're heading. This is what we're doing. And they have their certain set of episodes. And because of that, it's, in my opinion, a perfect TV series. Like it's got 2 seasons left to go, but it's pretty perfect so far. So I think the format with that allows people to stick to a plan, know the expectation of the work that they're doing, and settle on a cast. Whereas in the broadcast world, you have to. Netflix has kind of a schedule. It's like a loosey-goosey thing. Maybe it's coming out in November. We don't have a date for it. We're going to just drop it whenever. We'll decide that later.
We can do this when you guys want. It's chill.
But with broadcasting and cable, you have to have a set date. You have to have a set schedule. You have to follow all of these.
Your
logistical
episodes need to be less than 3 hours long. Stranger Things. Now, I mean, I think that the dark side of the Netflix model, and I'm speaking as somebody who's just imagining what the future would probably be like. Is that sometimes they set up these great future seasons. I got really invested in Future Me, of course.
Yes.
Paper Girls on Amazon Prime, and it was really good. It's based on a comic book series by I think Brian K. Vaughan, and I was like, this is so good. And we loved Paper Girls, and we watched the season. We were like, I can't wait for season 2. It got canceled, and it got canceled on kind of a cliffhanger, and you could tell that they had a plan that where they were going to take the story. So sometimes, it's starting to, honestly, the streaming is starting to feel a little bit more like the networks used to, where things are getting canceled with no closure, just kind of sitting there. But I do feel like there was kind of a sweet spot back before all the streamers popped up. There was 25 streamers, and now they basically recreated broadcast television. Where I think when The Crown started, and that was probably why it was during this time where they could be really confident. It was really popular too. They weren't going to cancel The Crown. Everyone loves it. So they can really make write their own ticket. Whereas Supergirl, I think, was more at the vagaries of what was going on behind the scenes. I just saw Aaron asks what happened in season 3 to affect the back half of season 3. So I don't remember all the details, but it was when Andrew Kreisberg, who was apparently pretty involved in plotting out season 3.
He was an executive producer, and I think the showrunner.
I think so. Yeah. And he was removed from the show for, I believe it was sexual harassment. He's he's not a good dude. He's a pretty bad guy.
Yeah.
But if I remember right, as a result of that, anything that he worked on had to get thrown out.
Why that is, I'm not sure. I don't know if that was a legal reason or if they just didn't want to give him the credit for it. I never
Part
understood.
Of me feels like it has to have been
part.
a legal thing, whereas they would have had to pay him.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
Probably something. I feel probably something either legal or from the network where they were anything that he touched, you have to get rid of.
Yeah.
Because I feel the writers would probably have leaned towards not doing that. If he was even if he was plotting things out, a lot of other heads are in that room. It's not, there's one person who's not, he's not going off into a corner and writing a whole season. So but I have to assume it was like something legal. But
Yeah, that's what I think. So that seems to add up. But Aaron, I guess to fill in some of those details of what might have been changed. We don't know fully how it was changed, but if you watch season 3, I'd be curious to know if you feel when you're watching it, if you feel a change towards the end of the season 3. Because when I was watching it, I don't know about you, Morgan, I could tell something had shifted. Because everything, in my opinion, everything was heading towards Alex adopting Ruby, young Ruby, who was Sam's daughter, and it seemed to be going there. And then all of a sudden, Sam lived, Ruby and Sam have a happy ending. Alex never adopts a kid. So a lot of that seemed to be different there. So I don't know if that also affected the Argo City parts of season 3 as well, because that seemed really short. It was like she went to Argo City, and it was like they made that big deal of like Kara saying goodbye at Catco, and there was a whole montage of her saying goodbye to all of her friends, and then she goes to Argo City, and then she just comes back and it's fine. So I don't know how much of the end of season 3 is changed, but I could tell a shift in the storytelling and the direction that it was going.
yeah, something definitely like moved around. Like the end of season 3 is just a little messier. I feel like it feels like it was kind of thrown together quickly, and a lot of those storylines, like you mentioned, that seemed like they were building up zig when I thought they were gonna zag. Like you feel like you know where they're building up to, and they're like, no. And it feels like a last minute turn versus like, oh, they set up these 2 paths and we just took one. It feels like, no, they were setting up the route, like Alex to adopt Ruby, and then no.
Yeah. So I would just be curious for people if they thought that it seemed like it shifted, because I always felt like season 3 was awesome, and then at the end of it, something it sort of, for me, degraded in quality a little bit. But I guess to shift it back over to Childish Things, Morgan, what did you think about Win in this episode and what he was going through?
Yeah, I thought this was a good episode for Win, to kind of give Win like kind of a spotlight episode. He'd mostly been in the background up until this one. I think this is kind of his biggest episode in season 1 so far. And Jeremy Jordan's a really good actor. So I think we'd seen a little bit of him being able to, do some stuff, but this is where they were like, okay, Jeremy Jordan, like you're going to have a lot of emotions. You're going to feel a lot of things. You're going to have monologues. It's going to be great. And he was like, I will eat these all up. It's going to be great. Don't you worry about me. And I thought he did a great job. That the moment where he kisses Kara and she pulls back, oh, I felt so bad for him. That's like and you can just see it all over his face that he's like, oh no. Like I thought this was my moment.
I do have a
It was
question for
not.
you about that, because do you feel like Kara was leading him on or sending him mixed signals?
I don't think so. I think in Kara's head, I don't think that Kara had honestly put it together that he has had feelings for her. And so like when she like held his hand, I think she was just doing it as like a friend, like, hey, you've been through something really tough. But as Win, who's like in love with her, they're sitting close together. She's like leaning towards him. She just holds his hand. It does seem like kind of the right moment to make his move.
Well, and it's not just that. There's a scene when they initially go to try to find Toyman in like the arcade area, and she tells Win stuff like, "Oh, I don't know what I would do without you. My life would be so different." And she says all of this stuff where I was like, Kara, if you, I mean, it's one thing to be his friend, but like you're telling him some stuff that I don't know. I kind of, in rewatching it,
yeah.
I thought if Kara didn't have romantic feelings for him, she should have backed off some of that stuff, because I thought she was sending him some mixed signals. I can see why Win thought the things that he did.
I think this is totally understandable that this episode would be the episode when it's like, I think I think I should go for it. I think I'm getting the signal. And it's like, no, you weren't. Yeah, I think Kara really needed to be, and I feel like Wynn's crush on her is pretty obvious too. So part of me wonders if Kara was being like purposefully oblivious, like she didn't really want to deal with the fact that he maybe had a crush on her, and so she like refused to see it. Um, but in that way, I think she was less careful with, like, the things that she said and the way that she said them, because I think if she had thought more about the fact that, like, maybe Wynn likes me a little bit, she wouldn't have been like, "Let me hold your hand and lean close to your face." But that was a brutal moment when she pulls
Yeah.
back and he goes, "Oh, no." Like, he's already really down, and it's like the final kick. Like, you just feel so terrible. He's having such a bad day. It just keeps getting progressively worse. And then, like, right from that scene, he gets kidnapped by his father, and his dad is like, "It's gonna be great because we're gonna bond in the prison yard." And Wynn's like, "You know what? Might as well."
Yeah,
Things are going bad.
yeah, I do. Now that you mention that, I think that there could have been a better balance of things for Wynn in this episode, because he does deal so much with his father and all of the turmoil. I mean, his father basically says, "I'm going to force you to go and murder this man at this toy
Yeah.
convention." And maybe something good should have happened to Wynn at the end of this
one
episode.
nice thing could have happened to
It
Wynn.
it didn't have to be, Carr returning his feelings or whatever, but something good I think should have happened to him. At least something upbeat. But I don't know what your thoughts are on the way they ended things, though. I know we're going into love triangle CW angst right off the top of this discussion, but what did you think about them sort of ending the episode with, "I don't know how this is gonna be moving forward"? What are your thoughts on that?
I was surprised because I feel like Supergirl as a show up until this point has been kind of like leaving the characters in like pretty positive places with each other. And in this episode, they leave them in a really precarious position where Carr is like, well, we can still be friends, right? And we can still sit too close to each other on the couch and hold hands. And he's like, I don't think that's gonna work for me now. And I like the way that he's not like he's blaming her. But he's saying he needs to be truthful about his emotions and not bottle things up, because that's why his dad turned out to, be a guy who puts bombs in teddy bears. And he's like, listen, I'm not saying I'm a bad day away from stuffing a bomb into a teddy bear, but this has been a pretty bad day. So, and I think that that's kind of like very healthy for him to realize, like, hey, I need to confront the stuff in my life that I've been letting just kind of sit by the wayside. And, if I'm upset about something, I can't just put like a happy face on it and tell her everything's going to be okay. And I thought, him saying like, I don't really know where that leaves us, because he's kind of the person who needs to kind of heal and put his heart back together again, because he seems it seems pretty clear from this episode she's not interested in him that way. And so he's kind of gotta figure out how he's going to deal with, being her friend. And I thought that it was nice to kind of leave the episode in that moment of ambiguity, because I feel like that is a really hard situation to navigate when those kind of feelings pop up in a close friendship and it's one-sided. Because it really is kind of on Wynn to figure out how he's gonna like work his way through it. Kara is just sitting there being Kara, hasn't been interested this whole time, continues not to be interested. So it's something that he really has to, figure out. And if sometimes that means that, taking a little bit of a step back from that friendship, because on his side it's gotten a little bit too close and he's gotten a little bit too involved.
Yeah, I think the boldness of the show to put a rift between those characters was surprising when I went back to it. Just because I think when I was watching it, even though I had seen that episode several times before, I was even like watching it like, oh my gosh, what's gonna happen? Are they gonna be okay? Like even in rewatching it, I was concerned about their dynamic. And so I think that's bold for a TV show to do, especially for the Supergirl TV series. They didn't really take those kinds of chances, in my opinion, later on in the series. So for them to purposely put a rift between these two essentially best friends at this point was interesting to me. Speaking of things with Kara and Wynn's feelings, New Rachel asks, was Kara oblivious to Wynn's feelings for her because she had feelings for James? What do you think about that, Morgan?
I think that's probably true. Although in the pilot, before she's like, hubba, hubba, when James walks in the door, it does seem like Wynn already has a huge crush on her that she is completely unaware of, because she talks about going on a date and he's like, what, a date?
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Want. So yeah, I feel like it's one of those things where it was like a long-standing simmering issue where he has a crush on her and she doesn't realize that he has a crush on her, and it doesn't really feel the same way. And I think that the James situation did not make things better, because when James came into the picture, I think all of her, romantic drama was centered on him. So she's like not noticing Wynn coming up from the side, like, hey, on your six.
Yeah, so with things like this, I hate to be like this, but it's like, what's the point? Why bring up Kara and Wynn if you're never gonna go there? I just personally, and this is why I hate love triangles. I hate them. I find them so pointless, because in the end, you've put all this storytelling time into something that's not gonna ever work out between two of the people in the love triangle. What is the point? The only point is the drama of it all, and the drama is stupid.
Oh,
And
yeah, I
so
hate it. I hated this love triangle in season 1. Like, going back and revisiting season 1, it's not as bad as I remembered it being, because I remembered like complaining about it all the time. Like, I hate this stupid love triangle. It made me like Wynn less. Because sometimes like a scene would end and Wynn would be like, there she goes, she won't ever know I love her. And I was like, oh my God, get this off my screen. I can't deal with it. So I agree with you. I just think it's like, yeah, it's completely pointless. Love triangles are almost uniformly terrible, because they take up so much. They like suck out so much oxygen from a storyline, and then whoever the main character kind of ends up with, you're like, I mean, how into that person could they have been? They had a spare.
Yeah. Well, to me, it's like, if you're gonna go the love triangle and you're gonna break Wynn's heart, you might as well take him the toy man route. You might as well do something because of it. Otherwise, you're just doing something for nothing. So I know it would have been predictable. It would have been predictable to do that, but at least it would have had a point to it.
At least the storyline would have had some reason to exist, versus him just being her friend, and there not being a love triangle that I had to deal with. Yeah, I agree. I was watching this episode and I thought, man, I feel like Jeremy Jordan would have like a really great like dark Wynn or gray Wynn
bad
period of time. Bad Wynn. He goes from sad Wynn to bad Wynn, and then in the future, dad Wynn. The full trifecta. But yeah, I feel like, we got to see Katie McGraw really like crush it whenever she got to be kind of morally gray and, less morally gray. And I think that made Lena so much more of an interesting character, because there was always that aspect of like, I don't know what she's gonna do, honestly. She's a wild card. And I feel like they could have played that up a little bit more with Wynn, because I feel like after maybe season 1, they struggled a little bit with what to do with Wynn. And they kind of relegated him to this like, he's gonna be the tech guy role, but they didn't have like a lot of story for him. And I feel like, honestly, like having like a little bad period would have given him a juicy story, and maybe would have been a little bit more interesting than like the Lena bad period always felt a little bit rushed and out of nowhere.
Yeah, there was not enough bad Lena for me.
I mean, I kind of wish that there was more of a connection with like, there could have been a really great scene of like Lena and Wynn bonding over stuff like that, because they both do have bad families. So I feel like there were some missed opportunities to have him like have some moments that were a little bit more morally gray, or have some moments where he was connecting with some of the other characters. After some of the Toyman centric episodes, it doesn't come up that much with him anymore.
Yeah, they could have had Wen tinker with some toys and create his own gadgets and things, but a lot of missed opportunities with a lot of these characters and a lot of these storylines, which it seems like the Toyman aspect of the show could have had more threads pulled in it than it did.
I see a comment from Rachel who says Lena, Wynn, and Brainy bonding over their bad family members. Yeah, I feel like there were maybe some missed opportunities there. We did at least get to see Lena and Brainy bond over their poor abilities to manage their own emotions.
Yes,
So
there's
Lena was like, "Listen, I'm gonna blow your mind here about the human condition. You take all your emotions, you shove them deep down inside, you never look at them again." For me personally, there's never been a negative implication to that. Then she like puts on her murder and leather jacket and walks away. And Brainy's like, that seems like solid advice.
Well, Kara and Wynn in Childish Things do talk about how they have homicidal maniacs in their families. So there is a little bit of that bonding that goes on in the episode. And I guess there is something to be said that it's not just a love triangle on the show. CM Gutier 74 says it's a love square between Kara, James, Lucy, and Wynn.
Right?
So I guess, Morgan, now that we've talked about part of that love square, let's talk about the other one. So Lucy has an interview, which I don't know that she knows it's an interview when she goes to talk to Cat Grant, but she has an interview with Cat Grant about a possible job opening at Catco, and that creates a little bit of a tension between Lucy and James. So what did you think about all of that in this episode, Childish Things?
Yeah, I thought that was the scene where she thinks, I think, that she's just there to hang out with Cat. She should have known, honestly. Cat doesn't hang out. Cat doesn't want to just have coffee with you. There's always some ulterior motive with Cat Grant. And she realizes pretty quickly, like, is this an interview? And it turns out it is. She wants her to be legal counsel because she's like, you're bored, and I can tell. And also,
I recently had all of my emails hacked, and it was a big legal concern for me. So I need somebody to come on board.
Exactly. I need a new legal team, and you seem to be here. Lucy's like, indeed I am. And she decides, and she has to sort of grapple with the idea of whether or not to take the job. I thought it was a little bit like trying to create drama out of nothing, because obviously the drama is if Lucy's there, it'll be harder for them to super friends. That is sort of the underlying drama.
For James and Kara to have some inappropriate relationship,
stolen moments in the office, like that one time they hugged for a second, and everybody was real weird about it. Once you have a girlfriend, you can never hug another person again. We all know that. But I mean, even Kat was like, "Are you upset because you and James have been flirting?" Kara's like, "I don't know what flirting means. Goodbye," and just jumps out the window. I mean, I think that the reason that they give is like it's going to be complicated when Lucy's here because we won't be able to all go super friends, and so maybe it's the best.
I don't think that's
and
what
I don't
it was
buy
at
it
all.
for a second. I don't buy it for. They look at each other like, "Oh no, not the super friends," and then they're like, "Hey, wink, wink." So I don't buy. Yeah, so it's of course part of the love square, which was like in full effect in this episode. Very love square, much love square. Wow. I thought that they were trying to make a thing over dramatic that like at the end of it wasn't dramatic at all. It's like you can tell that Lucy and James are going to work out because they can't seemingly have like an adult conversation like, "Hey, would it be weird for you if I worked here with you and we were just together constantly. And he's like, no, you should do what you want. And she's like, oh yeah, should I take the job? And he's like, yeah, I think maybe you should take the job. And she's like, good, I'll take it. I'll take this job, even though you don't want me to take it. And he's like, lady, I literally just told you should take the job. And she's like, good, I'll take it. He's like, yes, that's why I told you to do that. She was obviously
That's
upset
not
with
far
him.
off from the actual conversation.
I had to like pause the episode at that point and like be like, what am I watching? Because what she was upset about was that he wasn't excited for her to be working with him in the same building. And he was kind of a little bit like, oh, okay. Like he wasn't super jazzed about it. And instead of being like, hey, are you not excited about it because you don't want to see me 24 hours out of a 24-hour day? Or is there some other reason? She was just like, well, I guess you don't want me to take it. It's like, he did just tell you if you want to, you should take it. So they like, I feel like the dialogue in that scene, like I don't like the love triangle to begin with. And then the dialogue in that scene didn't do it any favors.
I think the excuse at the end, like the very ending scene when James says something like, it wasn't because I didn't want you here with me. It was because I looked at your job and thought it was really cool and was jealous that you were excited about your job. And I was thinking about how I don't like my job. I thought it was like, stop it. Stop.
All right, James.
That's you
All
you
right,
like
James.
working with the people that you work with, and you probably have a high paying job, and you're probably well off because of it. I think you need to cool it. I think this is an excuse just not to give away the fact that you have feelings for Kara. I didn't buy that for a second, but I would like to think I don't remember when our speculation that James lived under the desk at Catco started. But I would like to think that his problems with Lucy being at Catco were maybe related to her honing, invading his space.
And this is like his man cave.
Yes.
Yeah. He's like, sorry, this is where I go to just bro down, I can't. No girls allowed in this under the desk area. And she's like, what? You're a tall man. How do you even get under there? He's like, you don't want to know, baby. And then he like hops into an under desk hammock. Yeah, I like this theorizing. I think that like he's like James has got to have one thing for himself. Like his whole place now, his home has probably been taken over by Lucy. They moved in together apparently between episodes and maybe after or before Thanksgiving. So they're like living together now, and like he's like, this is my one quiet place where I can think. Not have to talk about the law.
Yeah, so I did not quite buy the James Lucy
No.
stuff in this, but Lucy was likable in the episode. I thought her interaction with Kat and them talking about Lois, I thought was nice as a Lois Lane fan to hear that conversation happen. So I thought all of that was good. I just didn't like some of the how James and Kara and their relationship was sort of seeping into the stuff with Lucy. I don't like all of that, but that's just par for the course with the love square.
The love square stuff wasn't great. I did like the conversation she has with Kat about Lois, because we get to kind of hear a little bit more about their relationship, and we hear more about like what's going on with this version of Lois Lane. And I love that she has a book that she's published already, and it had a name and I can't remember, but it was really
something
funny.
like Time to Soar.
Yeah, something about soaring. I remember that.
Yeah, A Time to Soar is the title of Lois Lane's memoirs, and it sounded like Cat Grant had read it, which I thought was interesting.
I think Cat Grant would have definitely read it. I think she would have read it with like a red pen in her hand, and like she would have like just put catty things in the margins, like "no way" or "you're not that. That's not your real age," stuff like that. Stuff like that, just to like a Lois Lane burn book, essentially. I think her book became. I could totally say Cat is like the definition of somebody who would like hate read something. just because it makes her mad.
She comes across like she doesn't like Lois Lane, but I think they were friends. That's
like
my
secretly deep
read.
down inside.
Yeah, that's my read on Kat and Lois's relationship in the Arrowverse. I think they were actually friends, but Kat likes to pretend that they have this great competition and that they're always catty to, for lack of better words, catty to each other. But I think they were actually friends and secretly respected each other. That's my thought on it, anyway.
I like that. I think that she definitely respects Lois. I think that they probably were friendly. I think that she enjoys hating Lois. I think that that's like a fun pastime for her. It's just anytime you can zing Lois Lane, like she's not gonna like just leave that on the table.
Yes. So that is the fun dynamic between them. Even though they never are on screen together, their dynamic is pretty fleshed out in the season.
CM Gutierrez says, I think Kat and Lois were frenemies, and I agree. I think that's probably where they were.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Okay, so this is a relatively small part in the episode, but I was curious, Morgan, what your thoughts were on Cameron Chase, because we read a Supergirl Rebirth, which featured Cameron Chase quite a bit with the Kryptonian werewolf in those stories. So in Rebirth, as well as the DEO storylines in the comic books, there's a graphic novel, a trade paperback called Chase that features Cameron Chase pretty heavily with the DEO. But here in the episode of Supergirl season 1, she is not an agent of the DEO. She's an FBI agent. So I was curious about what your thoughts were on the portrayal of Cameron Chase.
Yeah, Rachel in the chat says, also, wasn't Cameron Chase only in this episode when she's a DEO agent in the comics and an important character in Supergirl Rebirth? Yeah, as I was rewatching this episode, and I see Rachel also said Cameron Chase definitely should have been a more important character. As I was rewatching this episode, first off, I was like, whoa, is that Emma Caulfield? Because the actress who plays Cameron Chase in this episode is a actress that I really enjoyed from Buffy. In fact, of course, Buffy. We're talking about like foundational bits of my personality. So if there's a Buffy actor anywhere, I'm like, I know exactly what episode you were on. But she was actually in Buffy like a very prominent character. She was like one of the major characters in Buffy. And so to see her be in this like one episode guest spot felt weird for me. It felt like something that you would usually cast, like, I don't know, like not a name actor or actress in that's like been in something prominent. Like you would just cast whoever, because the character had it was not fleshed out in any way. Honestly, like any actor kind of could have been that character. It was just like we've seen the the police officers or the FBI agents in Supergirl all the time. They don't cast somebody who I recognize from a thing. So I was so confused if, like, first off, it's Cameron Chase, so that's like a DC character. So I was like, Chase, no way, this can't be Cameron Chase. And so I like looked it up and I remembered, oh yeah, she was in Rebirth. She's a DC character. Like, what? She worked for the DEO. What's going on? And I was so confused. And I wondered to myself, like, was there plans to make her a character who was going to pop back up again in the future? And then that just never happened. And that's why they cast like an actress who'd been in, some stuff in the past, who like had some, especially like genre,
cred.
she's genre cred. It's a comic book show. She was in Buffy. Buffy has comics. Yeah. So it's like, is that why they cast Anya? It was a bizarre decision. Like, Emma Caulfield is a great actress. Why would you give her like the lines of like a Law and Order extra? I don't really know. Like there was nothing to that character. She just like came in to be like, Win, I'm suspicious. And he was like, I'm not hiding anything. And she'd turn her back and he'd be like, I am. So she was like medium at her job at best. Also, she was like so excited to shoot people who were like who were just like standing in one place.
Yes.
They shot and would have killed Wynn's dad if he wasn't
just straight up murdered him.
Just straight up murdered him. They were like, put your hands up. And he like didn't put his hands up because, again, a hologram. And they were like, all right, pump him with lead. And I was like, whoa, isn't that like a totally out of left field?
I don't think you can do that as a police officer.
I feel like shouldn't a taser situation be in play, or I don't know, something less lethal than all of the guns? She's like, let loose all of the guns. And the same thing happens in the toy convention when Wynn is there. They immediately go to shooting him. They're shooting at the stage of a crowded toy convention with like children around. It just seems like it feels like Agent Anya is actually not very good at her job. But they didn't give the character any like backstory or any reason why you think that this is actually like a character from DC Comics. If I hadn't read Rebirth, if I wasn't aware that like Cameron Chase is like a DC character, I would just think it's like a random FBI agent.
Yeah, even when she and the other officers or the military people, whoever it was, the FBI agents, they go into the place where they have the skee ball machines, and when they enter the door, she's like got the gun. Now, I'm not like a police officer. I don't know how to handle a firearm, but I don't think you enter a room with the gun up and just swinging it around. I think they normally, like, I don't know what good gun etiquette is, but I would assume that you would point the gun down so that you're not gonna like accidentally discharge the bullet. But you wouldn't actually you wouldn't accidentally fire. So you would like normally they hold it down and kind of walk around in the room, but she was like up, just like swinging it around. I was like, oh my gosh, you need to maybe revisit some of your training. You're an FBI agent and you like walk into a room and you're just swinging a gun around. It was so strange to me. But I, again, I'm not an expert with firearms, so maybe somebody else could let us know what the etiquette is for that. But I don't think that was handled correctly.
Her and her whole team were trigger happy. I'm just going to say that straight out. They were ready to shoot something. They didn't care what it was, really. Yeah, I just thought it was so strange that like, why have her be Cameron Chase if she's just like a regular FBI agent that they're just using for one episode? Why cast like a name actress? It felt weird, like maybe they were setting this character up to come back again in the future, but then she definitely never does. So the whole thing was kind of jarring to me. I was like, why is Emma Caulfield here? Why is she Cameron Chase? I don't remember her ever showing up again in this show. So I know she's not coming back.
Yeah, just this one episode. I think if it had been my show, which it wasn't, but it would have made sense to me that they would introduce her maybe as FBI agent Cameron Chase, and then maybe the DEO recruits her to become an agent of the DEO, and maybe then she becomes director of the DEO at some point, because Alex not going to be director of the DEO.
She can't. It's just legally not allowed.
So maybe Cameron Chase could have come in and played a more important role, because in the comics, Cameron Chase, she and Mr. Bones, or Director Bones, by that point, Cameron Chase and Director Bones are the DEO. When I think about the DEO in the comics, those are the two characters that come to mind. So it's strange to me to see her as an FBI agent and not a DEO agent. So I think it's a bit of a waste. I think from what I remember back when the episodes were airing, when the news came out that she had been cast and she was going to appear on the show, it sounded like she was doing a favor to the showrunners, like, hey, I'm just going to pop in and do this thing. But it does seem like a waste. She doesn't come back later. She doesn't have a really, maybe if she had an important role in finding Toyman, or, maybe she had been kidnapped by Toyman or something big happened to her, but nothing really happens to her as a character to justify that. So I agree with you.
Yeah, it was just really weird. I was wondering if there was like any behind the scenes stuff that we we didn't know about, that they like had plans for the character and then they just scrapped them. But I would think that something like that could have happened maybe between season 1 and season 2. But
Possibly.
This is midway through season 1 and they never bring her back again, to my knowledge, in season 1. So
No, this is her only appearance on the show.
so like I don't know. Like that doesn't make sense to me in that case then. Like if they were going to try to build her up to be something, it would be like a Maxwell Lord situation where
yeah.
she just fall off a cliff between seasons 1 and 2 and never be heard from again.
Yeah, it would make sense if they wanted to save something like that for season 2 and plans changed, but I don't know of anything like that having happened. I think she just was intentionally brought in as a one-off character. So if anybody has any information differently to that, let us know. But as far as I'm aware, this was just intended to be a one-off appearance by Cameron Chase in this episode. So really unfortunate, because what bothers me about the Supergirl TV series is that they had the opportunity. They had 6 seasons to do something with the DEO. They
I
could have done
know.
so many cool things with the DEO and brought in all these really special, unique characters that are just DEO related. And then they just didn't
No,
do it. And the
they were
DEO
just
became so boring.
they were like, "No, we don't care for it." It felt like in season 1 they had ideas about the DEO and like what it was going to be and how it's kind of like operate in this universe. It feels like all those ideas kind of got thrown into a dumpster out back by season 2.
Oh, they definitely did, because in this episode, Jean mentions that he could not operate at the DEO as Jean Jones because he is an alien. And I was like, lots of aliens.
Sweet summer
passed-
child.
passed by the another director was an alien as well. I mean,
Actually,
Brainy was a
most-
Coluan.
One could argue most of the directors of the DEO were aliens. Does Alex even count?
And also by the end of the series, being an alien was not associated with a threat anymore. It was like people were going to alien bars, and there was alien amnesty acts and executive orders making them citizens and making them, have equal rights to everyone, even though that's not how things work under our Constitution.
I think that there was just a big sea change between seasons 1 and seasons 2 about like the universe that the show sat in, that I remember when we were talking about season 2 back in the olden days. I guess that's in our future right now.
In the future, yes.
Yeah, we're
still
past.
in 2016.
But I remember when we talked about it in the future, we were pretty jarred by like how different tonally season 2, the beginning of season 2 was, because the idea in season 1 is like there are 2 prominent aliens that everyone knows, and that is Superman and now Supergirl. And those are kind of the only aliens around. And then the Fort Ross escapees are like the other aliens, but they were obviously all in prison. Not all of them reformed. So most of the aliens, right, were like villains that she had to fight. By season 2, there is a bar where people just chill out and kick back with a cold one, and they're all aliens, and everybody knows about aliens. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention my good friend, the timeline breaker. Oh gosh, what was his name? Amadei. So yeah, so then in the future, Amadei is like he's swanning around with Clooney like in the 90s or whatever. He's in Vanity Fair. So apparently we've all always known about aliens, and I think that's kind of like the thing that drives me the most crazy, is that they could not decide on like whether aliens were a relatively new thing that was like mostly a Superman thing, or if aliens were chill and they were your next door neighbor. Like there's and the show would like veer wildly between people being like, oh my god, aliens, as if they were a new thing, and like, oh no, these aliens, they're my friend, as if they had been around from, and it never really made sense. So I think this is kind of a callback to the aggravation that will be in our futures, as because we are in the past.
We are in 2016. There was also something that I thought was interesting with Jean, was that he mentions, and I had forgotten about this completely, he mentions that if he continues to shapeshift as other people, he might eventually be permanently the Martian Manhunter Green Martian.
Yeah, they
Did you
dropped that
catch that?
fast.
Yeah.
They were like, they put that into an episode, and an executive came up to them, and they were like, "It's such a fascinating concept." And they're like, "Yeah, we think so too." And it's like, "You don't have the budget for it though, so he better stay in this form." And they were like, "Great note," because they didn't have that John Jones transformation Martian budget.
No.
Not even a CBS, and obviously they had a stick of gum and a prayer at the CW, so they didn't have Martian Manhunter money there either. But yeah, I was really surprised by that storyline that they brought up, because it's really never brought up again.
Never.
No. So we have
And
like
he shapeshifts quite a bit in the future.
quite a bit. We have a couple more entries in our like forgotten of Supergirl that we had actually forgotten. Cameron Chase, why?
Yeah.
And then this whole thing with John, that if he changes enough, his face will stay that way. I also was like a little bit confused with like, so he breaks into Maxwell Lord's evil compound, and
Yes.
he sees the girl with the black
Jane Doe.
eyes,
Yes.
and he's like, "Well, that doesn't seem good." And he's a shapeshift into Maxwell Lord, and he's like, "Hello, it is me. I have a overinflated sense of my own ego." And the lady's like, "It's weird that you're so self-aware today, Mr. Lord." And he's like, "Alex Danvers could do much better than me. I'm going to go cry about it in this room." So he was chill and normal as Maxwell Lord, I think. I like how bad he is at pretending to be anyone else this
Yeah.
season. Even as Supergirl, he was kind of bad at being her. He was just like, "Hello, fair citizens." It is not an adult man, but me, a young woman, Supergirl. Girl power, etc. Like a classic Shakespeare, etc. And then he like walks out. But when the guard catches him, is like, "I don't think that you're Maxwell Lord," and he was like, "Why not?" He's very like Clayface from the Harley Quinn animated show, where he's like trying to be an actor, but he's trying too hard at it. He's like,
Well,
he hasn't found his
that's the
motivation.
history of Clayface, is that he at one point in his origin story was an actor. One of the versions of Clayface was an actor.
I love it. The Clayface in Harley Quinn is just like so unhinged, and I adore him. He's always like, "I must get the part." He like always talks like very over exaggerated. I feel like this is kind of like that's kind of what John was doing, trying to be Maxwell Lord. He's like, "I'm evil," and the guard's like, I don't think so, sir." But when he wipes his memory, he like wipes out the memories of his family and his children, and this also doesn't really connect with how we see him use his powers in the future. I'm talking with my psychic future knowledge. Because I mean, although the brief period of time when he turns Alex's brain into Swiss cheese aside, he's pretty targeted with those like memory wipes. So I was so surprised in this episode where they're like, he doesn't remember anything. And I was like, either Jean was like, "I don't like the look of this guy," or like,
was he out of practice, you think? Maybe he hadn't done it in a while. But you're right. When he wipes Alex's memory, he's supposedly, although it was not very clear when all of that happened. I had a lot of questions with the mind wipe, because
the mind wipe was what it needed to be for the episode in question.
It was my impression that Alex's mind wipe by Jean was just to remove the knowledge that Kara was Supergirl. And that I thought that was the targeted wiping of her memory. But there were some episodes where it was like, what? I mean, I don't know. It feels like it's something else now. But yeah, Jean should be able to, like, he could have just wiped the memory of this Maxwell Lord being in the room
Yeah,
and that could have been it. But he
the
wiped
memory
the memory of this guy's kids.
Yeah,
It was severe.
It was pretty brutal, actually. He was like, "Oh, I said I didn't want to do this," and it's like, "What? Because you're incredibly bad at it." He only needed to wipe like literally like 60 seconds out of this guy's memory, and instead he wiped out like his entire life. He was just like, "Honestly, I don't think this guy's got a lot going on. Let's clean slate this." Let's clean slate him. But then in the future, he's like able to go into Alex's memory and like take out the specific knowledge that Kara is Supergirl, but not wipe all of her. It just seems very strange. Like we also see him wipe out like you're not going to remember the last 5 minutes kind of thing in the future. So I don't know. I guess they weren't as aware of like what they were going to do with his powers in this, or maybe we were supposed to think that he's so rusty that he doesn't remember how to use them. I don't really know where they're going with this.
Or maybe they were trying to show the severity of the consequences of doing that, although it doesn't really matter because in the future,
because
he's going to do it willy-nilly.
Carry through. Yeah. They kind of set it up as if like, oh, Hank has these powers that are, that are dangerous and that he has to be really, really careful about using. And then in the future, he's like, a mind zap for you and a mind zap for you.
But I guess I do have a storytelling question for you about that, since Morgan, you are a writer. So So do you think it had meaning in the story for this guy to forget his whole family? Other than that, like he could have just had the last 5 minutes of his life mind wiped, and it would have been the same. Essentially the same result, is that he would have forgotten that Jean had been there as Maxwell Lord. So did it even need to be that severe?
It didn't. And I think the only reason to make it that severe would be to have it be part of John's storyline about like either I'm so rusty that it's incredibly dangerous for me to mind wipe people, so I really shouldn't do it, or these mind wiping powers or these psychic powers are really dangerous and something I have to get a control over. Something to do with like John confronting these powers or having to deal with these powers in some way that like leads back into his story. But and I remember season 1 Medium. I don't remember that being a storyline in season 1. And so there's no reason for this to have happened.
I think there is. I think they touch on that a little bit about how he's upset with himself, and maybe we haven't gotten there in Rewind yet. I cannot remember, but there is some regret from him and some hesitation from him to say, I can't do this anymore. This is not something I need to be doing. But of course, that doesn't carry on in the future. That does not get handled with the same caution in the future.
Yeah, he eventually is completely chill with doing this. Like he just does it all the time. He's able to wipe out like 2 minutes of a person's memory and it's not a big deal. So like, it just feels like without that being like hung on something that has to do with like John and his powers, there was really no reason to do that.
Yeah, it's
strange.
Yeah, a little strange
choice.
but I guess if you wanted to deal with the consequences of his powers, it does make sense.
There is a question from CM Gutierrez that I think is actually an excellent question. She says, in this episode, we learn about John and his clothes are part of his shape-shifting abilities. Does that mean even his super suit is a function of his ability? Is he walking around with no clothes on?
I think typically the Martians, because we see other Martians in their natural form naked.
Yeah.
Like the green Martians and especially the white Martians, when we see the white Martians on the show.
That is true with the white Martians for sure.
Yeah. So I think that's correct. I think the supersuit is part of his shape-shifting abilities. And if he was just his normal green Martian self, he would be no clothes. Like
That's
Kermit the Frog.
One. That's an interesting one because I hadn't really thought about that before. And now I'm like, oh, yeah, because he can shapeshift into anyone. He's not in his like John Jones outfit, but just as Maxwell Lord, which would have been amazing. So yeah, good question.
Yeah, well, we'll have to think about that. The more that we see Martian Manhunter on the show, but yeah, I think his natural alien self would just be Nicholas, which I guess would have been the way that things happened on Mars. So
Kermit style.
yeah, so that's just the way they rolled on Mars. The other thing that we haven't talked about in regards to this episode, we talked a little bit about Maxwell Lord. But one of the things that is unique to this episode is the date that Alex
Oh,
goes on
yeah.
with Maxwell Lord. What did you think about their spending time together in fancy clothing, eating fancy food?
Yeah, that was weird. Didn't care for it. I thought Alex looked great. And honestly, I think those two actors in scenes together are really good. I think that they have like good chemistry. I did not find that scene to be incredibly compelling. I will say, I think I might have had to rewind it once or twice because I was zoning off on my phone. I was like doing something else. I was like, oh no, I'm podcasting about this. I can't just not pay attention to it. I have to go back. So it didn't really. Alex looked great, but it didn't really do a lot for me. And I also feel like the scene that they had before, where he tells her about his tragic backstory with his scientist parents who died, that was way more interesting than what they were doing here. I don't feel like we got more layers to their like sort of cat and mouse back and forth sort of relationship. I don't feel like I learned anything like that great about these characters. It really did feel like what it was in the story, which is like I have to keep him occupied for like an hour so that Jean can get in there and see what's going on. Which wasn't like super compelling television for me.
Well, I think that scene was a good example of a scene having multiple purposes. So you have the one purpose where Alex is acting as a decoy, a distraction, so that Jean can get in there and figure out what's going on with Maxwell Lord and his facilities and his Jane Doe. Then you get the fact that he plants something on Alex to then later, spoiler alert, at the end of the episode, he figures out that Kara and Alex are sisters, or specifically, Alex is Supergirl's sister. So he figures that out because I think he had made that connection at the dinner. And then also, I think they were building in season 1 towards an Alex and Maxwell Lord romantic relationship, and so that would have been part of that. So I, at least, even though it is kind of strange to go back and watch it now because nothing really came of it, but that scene is actually a good writing example because it shows that because every scene should do more than one thing. That's what I've always heard about, especially like screenwriting, because at one point I tried to learn about a bunch of things about screenwriting because I was going to be a screenwriter and write my own TV pilot, and then that never happened. But one of the things that people always talk about is that your scene should be doing more than one thing. It shouldn't just have one simple thing. There should be either subtext, or it should be pointing to something else, should have some foreshadowing, whatever it is. And so I think that scene actually does a good job of that. And there's also something that's really funny about their dynamic is that Maxwell Lord has Alex Danvers in his phone as Mata Hari, who was a Dutch exotic dancer and courtesan who was convicted of being a spy for Germany during World War One. She was executed by firing squad in France. So that shows the contempt that he has for Alex Danvers.
Aaron says Kyler Lee talks about their relationship being very cat and mouse. And Rachel says, I think the most interesting part about it was at the end when we found out that Maxwell had figured out the connection between Alex and Supergirl. So yeah, that is a big part of that scene is Max asking her, like, why do you care so much about Supergirl? Like, what is the connection there? And he figures it out at the end. And I also think it's really interesting that during that dinner, Alex is playing him, thinking that she has gotten the upper hand.
Yeah.
Because, John's gotten in and he's, wiped out the security guard's entire life and all of that. And then at the end of the episode, we find out that he was actually playing her, playing him.
Yeah.
It was a double cross of a double cross because he put a camera on her bag. And I love that scene because not only is it like a great Alex and Kara couch scene, some of my favorite scenes of the whole show, where they're like bonding and they're watching TV, but it's also like it's a very Alex Danvers thing that she does where she's like, please, I am so much smarter than that guy. He thought he was running circles around me. I was running squares around him. And then it pulls out and you see that he planted a camera on her and he's like, he's smart now.
And not just a camera, like he sees in Kara's apartment.
In her apartment.
In their intimate moment of eating pizza with a blanket over them on the couch, watching a movie. Kara is in the Supergirl suit and she's like got her head on Alex's shoulder. And like they are like sister bonding time. Seriously, in the place where Supergirl lives. It's not just like he sees them somewhere. He sees, like, he knows where they live. He sees inside Kara's apartment. He sees her in her house with her Supergirl suit on. So he definitely, he played Alex like a fiddle. But it is funny that right before that, she's like, "Oh yeah, I'm an expert trained in body language, and I can figure these things out because I'm a fancy DEO agent."
Don't you worry about me, Kara. One day I'm going to be director of the DEO. Just me, myself. I do think that there is something a little bit funny about like Alex sometimes like buys her own hype a little bit too much, and we see her thinking like, I got this, I don't even need help, I am the spy, and then obviously he's spying on them, so maybe she should have been a little bit less spy in her own issues of Alex's awesome magazine.
I'm pretty disappointed that she did not check her stuff that she brought back with her after meeting with Maxwell Lord. That's really slack on
Aaron
her part.
also mentions Alex perfectly placed her purse so that he gets like a perfect view of them on the couch.
Oh my gosh, the perfect composition for it. Yeah. So there is that. And also Seem Gutier 74 says the Danvers sisters were watching Game of Thrones, which is very fitting for the moment, the games they're all playing.
Ooh, yeah. I like it. It's also good because obviously this is an episode about Toyman. Toyman
plays games,
which are games. It all comes back around together.
Well, there is something to be said about that this episode and the season are pretty well written, I would think. So it doesn't surprise me that the Game of Thrones choice in that would be intentional and on point for the episode. Well, Morgan, were there any other things that you wanted to talk about that we didn't, or do you have any final thoughts about this episode?
I think we covered this one really well. But yeah, I really liked this one. I thought it was a really great episode. There was a lot of storylines going on, but it didn't feel too crowded. I think that it gave Wynn a lot of character growth and character progression, and like really got the audience to know who Wynn was. It gave him a great backstory and like an interesting character journey. So yeah, I think that this was another really great season 1 episode that was just kind of like doing its thing really well.
Yeah, I have no complaints except for Cameron Chase mishandling her firearm. That might be my biggest complaint about the episode.
I feel like my biggest complaint was the Cameron Chase thing being so weird. Otherwise, I thought it was great.
Yeah, otherwise a solid season 1 episode. So I'm glad that we're getting to revisit these episodes because it's nice to watch good episodes of Supergirl. So I hate to say that. I'm in the past saying that about future episodes.
Oh yeah.
I hope the show doesn't take a
I
really
think
quality downturn towards the end of the show.
I think the show's gonna go out on a high note involving no lizard people. That's my prediction from 2016.
Speculation planted in January 2016. We'll see how that pans out. See if Morgan is right. That
That'd
would
be
be
great.
really, really specifically correct if that really pinpointed a prediction for the future. So we'll have to see if that comes true. But I guess in the meantime, let's hop back into the Legion Cruiser. We're going to go back to 2022 and maybe we'll find out if you were right.
We'll see.
So we're gonna
I can't wait.
go back to the future. Turns out, now that we're in 2022, there were lizard people at the end of Supergirl.
2016 me was so much younger, so much more naive.
But still very smart and very intuitive.
I think so. Weird that we kept the same sweater for that long. Really committed to it.
If it still fits and it still
You
is
know
good,
what?
why do
Here we
you
are.
need to get rid of it? So that is fun to come back to the future and see how things how they have changed and how the show has changed and maybe how we have changed as
How
people.
we have changed. Yeah, I think the lizard person did change me fundamentally in some ways. Like they changed for some reason into a lizard person.
Still unexplained. We will never know.
We'll never know. I hope they never explain it to us, honestly. There's no explanation that would be better than the why in my head.
Don't ruin that mystery for us. We like it as hidden and unexplainable. All right, Morgan, shall we get into some feedback?
Yeah, so Daryl wrote in with some feedback about Childish Things, writing, "Seeing Lucy on Supergirl fills me with anguish because I know what is coming for her in Superman and Lois. Going from such an incredible person on Supergirl to essentially a cult leader's lackey on Superman and Lois. What is going on that show?"
Yeah, season 2 had the introduction of Lucy Lane to that series in the context there. She is played by the same actress, but it's a different context and a different backstory for her. And you would love it. She's tied up in a cult.
Love it.
She goes really hard in the cult. And really creates a rift between the Lane family over it. And she's not quite the successful, I just moved into town, but I don't need a job. It's not like I had to pay any bills. I just moved into town. I'm fine. I don't need a job. She's not quite the successful Lucy Lane who just takes a job because, hey, that would be fun to do, not because I need the money for paying.
She's got, to be fair, she's got that lawyer money. So
yeah, and I guess she's living with James. So why does she need money? She can just use James's
gonna
house.
figure it out for a while.
He can pay for everything. So it's not like she is the successful Lucy Lane and the accomplished Lucy Lane who would become not only Catco's head of legal counsel, but also director of the DO, who was also in the military. She has none of that on Superman and Lois, and she is simply a follower of a cult leader. So that is a downside. The upside to that, though, I will say, the season is pretty good. The portrayal of Lucy Lane, not so great. A lot left to be desired. But the season, though, the storyline is pretty interesting.
Interesting. Well, I'm going to have to catch up at some point in time. Daryl goes on to say, Kara is very strange. She doesn't want to listen in on Kat and Lucy, but doesn't hesitate to listen in on Wynn talking to Cameron Chase. That is a good point. She has some selective ethics there on her listening in. Daryl says Jean might be worse at undercover work than Kara. I think the security guard deserves all of our sympathy. Why does Kara not use her X-ray vision on the box with the doll?
Yeah, that is
a great
question.
I honestly hadn't thought of that, but yeah, she should have done that for sure.
There should have been like a little piece of dialogue, like, "Oh no, the box is made of lead, or there's lead preventing me from seeing it.
One bit of dialogue would have helped that along.
Or like her trying to do it and she can't, and you see that it's lead, something like that. Because I mean, it's just a little planted doll that she thinks is real. So that is something that I think. But at least Supergirl was trying to save a life. She thought there was somebody in trouble and was trying to save a small child trapped in a suitcase of some kind. So it probably would have been smart to see her use her X-ray vision, but I at least like that Supergirl was heroic in that moment, even though she wasn't portrayed as very smart in using her abilities. So there is that, I guess. All right. Well, thank you for your sharing your thoughts, Daryl. I think now it is time maybe for us to do some snap judgments. In the game of snap judgments, each person is presented with 2 options, but must only choose one. First instincts are recommended and explanations are unnecessary.
Okay, so our first snap judgment. More sinister Toyman weapon, throwing star yo-yo, or teddy bear bomb.
Everyone who is watching the live stream in the chat, feel free to put your picks for the snap judgments in the live chat and we will check them out. It's also really interesting that we're playing snap judgments in season 1 because we did not have snap judgments during season 1.
True.
So it's fun to play them here. Okay, so throwing star yo-yo or teddy bear bomb. I think that the throwing star yo-yo is much more sinister, and I think is a really clever use of a toy gadget to be something very serious and dangerous. I thought it was cool.
Yeah, I think the yo-yo absolutely, because the teddy bear bomb, while menacing, I don't know, there's something about the yo-yo that was like kind of scary, that the way that he was using it in the jail to kill all those guards.
Yeah, he was using it forwards and backwards, and I guess
he was good at it.
Was he walking the dog at some point with the yo-yo, like doing all the tricks? I don't know.
Would it be amazing if he got too into doing the tricks? He was like, the guards like standing at the end going like, "What are you doing, man?" He's like, "Sorry, I just got too into it."
But he was slinging that yo-yo like he had been practicing with it. I guess that's what he was doing while he was in prison. He was brushing up on his yo-yo skills.
Better Supergirl moment: sucking up the poisonous gas or freezing the explosion at ToyCon.
I thought the freezing the ToyCon explosion was strange. I guess it's the only way out of that. But then you're breaking all that glass, so that all the sort of the glass, the icicles or whatever, are falling on the people. So you're saving them from an explosion, but it would still cause harm. I don't know how those people walked away without getting cuts or, impaled by an icicle. So I'm going to say sucking up the poisonous gas, because at least she sucked it up, she saved everybody, and she got rid of it. And that was to me, that was a cleaner save for Supergirl.
Yeah, I'm going to go sucking up the poison gas too, because when she did the freezing thing, it seemed dangerous when the explosion went off and the frozen ice burst out, and you would have to feel like in like a more realistic scenario, some of that sharpenal's like getting people.
Oh,
like some people are like gonna go need the emergency room because they have a big piece of icicle in their neck. So feels like the sucking up the gas was like a less dangerous one.
Yeah, it would be good if they had told everybody, get down under a table or, or leave the room or whatever. And then the explosion just happens and all the icicles and stuff just kind of did their own thing where nobody was around. But it didn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, Aaron comments that the freezing didn't make much sense. And I think we both agree. All right. What's the biggest writing mistake by the show regarding Cameron Chase? That she was an FBI agent instead of a DEO agent, or that she only made one appearance?
They're both bad.
Yeah, they're both bad.
But I guess I would say only made one appearance, because maybe she could start off as an FBI agent and then in multiple appearances become a DEO agent. So I would have been okay if that had been her starting point.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's worse that she only made that one appearance, because she could have gotten recruited into the DEO maybe after some other episode that included the FBI, where she's like, they're like, I think you've got the right stuff, Chase. And she's like, pew, pew. And they're like, you have to stop shooting people, though. Like, that's pretty important. She was like, I can try, but I'm making no guarantee. And they're like, that one's a wild card. I think that they could have done some stuff with her. Listen, in my ideal scenario, she comes on board. They're like, Chase, stop shooting people. She's like, I'll try my best. And then suddenly there's a new sheriff in town at the DEO. Maybe somebody who doesn't mind that she shoots all those people. Is he just a sharply dressed bag of bones? Yes, he is. Director Bones comes in. He's like, you know what? I like it. I like Chase's methods. And then there's like a whole thing. It would have been amazing.
Oh my gosh, that would have been so great. To have the unruly DEO who's breaking all the rules and the standards that everybody is familiar with, just going crazy. I think it's also possible that maybe Cameron Chase, because Alex claimed that she was an FBI agent, but that was just the story that she would tell people out in public, because the DEO is supposed to be a clandestine secret organization that the public was not aware of. So she would claim that she was an FBI agent, but really she was an agent for the DEO. So maybe Cameron Chase was a DEO agent, but she just claimed to be an FBI agent, and we didn't hear that at all explained. But I guess that could have been the way they were going.
Yeah, I could see it. We have one last snap judgment from the chat. It's from Aaron. Aaron says, if you were Win, would you rather Kat not know you at all, or Kat know you well as Toyman's son?
Oh, yeah, Kat not know me at all. I think that's definitely the way to go.
Kat not knowing you at all seems safest, honestly. Because remember when Kat realized who he was and immediately was like, if you weren't the only IT person, I would fire you for being slow. And he's like, lady, you didn't even know who I was an hour ago. It's better if she doesn't know who you are.
Yeah.
Then she doesn't know enough to fire you or yell at you. So I think that's probably safest.
Yes, I think it's because Kat knows most things. She picks up on most things. So I would think that you would want to have some boundaries in her knowledge. So definitely wouldn't want her to know me as a Toyman's daughter or son in that situation. So definitely want Kat Grant off your radar. No judgments on your snap judgments. Okay, well, it's been really fun to play Snap Judgments in season 1 episodes, because season 2, with the appearance of Snapper Carr, is how we came into Snap Judgments. So we never did them for season 1 episodes. So lots of fun to do that. So I guess now that we have done our episode discussion and talked about Childish Things from season 1, I guess it is time for us to get into some Supergirl Radio and some DC TV podcast plugs. If you would like to contact Supergirl Radio, you can post a comment on our website at supergirlradio.com. You can email us at supergirlradio@gmail.com. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, you can call us at 678-718-7252. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and Instagram, all at Supergirl Radio. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Radio Public, Podchaser, and Spotify, where we also have a Spotify playlist that includes music featured on and inspired by the CW's Supergirl TV series. We are listed on DC's fan page, which you can find at dccomics.com/DC-fans. If you like what we do, we encourage you to give us a rating and write us a review on Apple Podcasts. If you enjoy our Supergirl Radio live streams, make sure to subscribe to the DC TV Podcast YouTube channel and hit that notification bell to get notified when we go live and wired. DC TV Podcast also has a TeePublic store, so if you're in need of new DC TV related t-shirts, tank tops, sweatshirts, onesies, mugs, notebooks, pillows, or stickers, go to supergirlradio.com and click on the TeePublic store link at the top of the page.
Supergirl Radio, Superman and Lois Radio, The Flash Podcast, and Legends of Tomorrow Podcast, Black Lightning Podcast, Batwoman Podcast 2, and Titans and Doom Patrol Podcast just for you. Justice League Dark Podcast, Green Lantern Podcast, Stargirl Podcast, Strange Adventures Podcast, and finally my favorite of the bunch, DCTV After Dark, where you're allowed to say fuck.
And since Childish Things was about Toyman, we have some game-related designs in the DCTV Podcast TeePublic store we would like to suggest.
Yeah, so if you are holding your own game night, we have game night shirts for you that appropriately say this is my game night shirt. So if you are having a game night or are going to a game night, you will be appropriately dressed for that. And in the future, at some point, we'll probably have another Supergirl Radio game night. So that will also be something appropriate to wear for those future live streams and episodes. And we also have Snap Judgment merch. So if you want a hoodie, a t-shirt, a mug, stickers, we've got all that stuff for Snap Judgment. So you can get a custom Sarah Louver, aka Comiker Girl design of Snapper Carr. So you can get Snapper Carr actually doing some snapping, which the show did not do. But here on Supergirl Radio, we're big on Snapper Carr snapping. So if you want to go check that out, we have lots of designs in the DCTV Podcast TeePublic store for your game night needs. So very exciting stuff. And so we also need to tell people about our DC TV Plugs contest. We're going to extend it for a few more weeks. Actually, not a few more weeks, just for one more week now at this point. It's going to be over on October 31st at 11:59 p.m. So if you want to get those recordings into us to help promote the podcast of the DCTV Podcast Network on Supergirl Radio. So basically, you would just read off the names of the podcasts in the DCTV Podcast Network: Supergirl Radio, The Flash Podcast, Legends of Tomorrow Podcast, The Waiting Room, DC on HBO Max Podcast, Stargirl Podcast, Superman and Lois Radio, Green Lantern Podcast, The Sandman Podcast, Justice League Dark Podcast, and of course, DCTV After Dark, everyone's favorite show on the network. You would just record yourself doing those plugs, and you can do it as creatively as you would like. It's your format, your recording, your portrayal of this, of being a person doing the plugs on the show. And you would just email that recording as an MP3, a WAV file, or an MP4 audio file to supergirlradio@gmail.com. And so this is your plugging of our podcast network that we will then play on Supergirl Radio until things change in the future, because I'm sure we will have new shows and shows may be taken away in case, unfortunately, if a show gets canceled, you know how things go with some of these things. So just in case lineups do change, we will probably have to do new plugs in the future. But for the meantime, these are the podcasts on the network that we need updated plugs for. So if you are interested in having your wonderful voice on Supergirl Radio, please check that out and record something for us and send it into supergirlradio@gmail.com. And the deadline for this is October 31st. At 11:59 p.m., but maybe we'll give you a few extra minutes. we'll maybe give you some extra time, but October 31st, definitely let's get those in by then. By Halloween, by the end of spooky season, please get those in. We'll be giving away some Art Baltazar books, and maybe I'll let you pick something from the TeePublic store. So we've got some goodies at the end of that recording for you. So definitely get that in if you want to be on the podcast. And you'll actually be doing Morgan a favor so that she does not have to do those plugs, because I will make her do those plugs in the future.
Don't make me.
if we don't have some winners for this contest. So that is something that we are going to run for one more week. So get those in if you would like to participate. And we would like to thank our legion of super sponsors for supporting the Supergirl Radio Patreon. These people are Michael, Sam, Anne Marie, Yvonne, Nicola, Leslie, Abby, Ermgard, Miriam, Nicole, Faith, Brian, Ethan, and Danny. And if you would like to also become a super sponsor, you can go to patreon.com/Supergirl Radio and check out our monthly levels. Well, you can also find me on Instagram. I'm on the gram at the Derby Kid, and I'm also on the social media platform Vero at Derby Kid. If you want to follow me on the socials, posting pictures and things. And you can also find me on my personal YouTube channel at youtube.com/duckmilkprod. I'm going to eventually get back to my Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice critical reception live streams, which are on Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern. Just have had a lot of stuff going on this fall, so unfortunately that has cut into my live streaming time, but I definitely plan on getting back to those to finish up that project. So that will be something to keep an eye out for. So if you want to give the channel a subscription and hit the get notified thing on the live stream, and that'll let you know when I'm going to go live for those things if you're interested in talking about art criticism.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Mojotastic. You can also find me as a co-host on DC TV After Dark, where we should be dropping an episode any old day now.
Nice.
Someday soon. And also on the Legends of Tomorrow podcast, where we are moving right along in our spooky sessions, and we'll be talking about Hocus Pocus 2 and the audio drama on Audible Impact Winter before the end of the spooky season. So definitely want to check us out over there and join us for a spooky good time.
Yeah, it seems like an audio, like a radio show. Are you doing a radio show? Is that what I heard?
So it's no, we're covering an audio drama on
Audio
Audible.
drama. Okay.
It's really hard to say. Audio drama on Audible.
Yes.
But it's basically like a narrative. It's kind of like a narrative podcast, but the way that it's written is not like somebody reading like an audiobook to you. It's more like actors saying lines. So like there's no like this person walked through the snow, right? It's like this person being like, I'm gonna go walk through the snow. So so they don't really have like those action lines to tell you what's going on. So it all has to be done through like acting and dialogue.
That
It's
sounds
really
so familiar. It seems
fascinating.
like we have both participated in something like that before,
Mayhaps
where we were
have.
actors in an
My
audio drama
bees.
podcast.
Every now and then, like we'll be somewhere and there'll be a bee, and Mike will be like, "Do the Thelma Minx voice," and I'll be like, "My bees." So yeah, I mean, if you wanna listen to us doing an audio drama, you should listen to the
Fakest.com. Yeah. Go check out the Fakest on all the podcasting platforms. Morgan is a phenomenal, versatile actress playing multiple parts. So I just played myself, but Morgan actually did some acting. So definitely go check that out. She's an actor like Clayface, being an actor. So that's interesting that there's another audio a drama podcast that you're going to review on the Legends of Tomorrow podcast. I'd be curious about your thoughts and Amy's thoughts on that.
Yeah.
Because the two of you have had voice acting audio drama experience.
Well, it was interesting because we were just going to cover the first episode for the podcast, and the first episode's like 20 some minutes. And we listened to the first episode while we were going somewhere, and it stopped, and Mike and I kind of looked at each other and we're like, so we're just going to listen to this whole thing, right? So we really liked it. But it was definitely a cool form of storytelling.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. It's sort of bringing the old radio dramas back,
Yeah.
which I like. I'm glad that this has become a thing that's happening on podcasts now. So I would like to think that Bill Meeks and the Fakest really started that trend in getting that to come back in. So I would like to think that we were on the ground floor of that genre of podcasting. Well, very cool. Well, I'm excited to hear about that in the spooky sessions for the Legends of Tomorrow podcast. But I think that's going to do it for this episode of Supergirl Radio. So until next time, I'm still Rebecca Johnson.
And I'm still Morgan Glennon. And thanks for joining us for Supergirl Radio Rewind.
McGurk! I love
Not
typing.
mess with my Google Docs, Meeksy.
Supergirl Radio is going live every night of the week. How do you like it? Is becoming a human burrito a plus or a minus? I don't know. It does seem snug.
I mean, they say you are what you eat.
Kira. I love that. So I do a podcast called Supergirl Radio, and one of our segments is Lena Luthor, Boardroom or Ballroom, because her outfit,
she looks like a boss in this coat.
Nasty Luthor like a different Luthor? It's not just Lena being mean?
No.
Helen Slater here. So fun to know that you're hosting a podcast called Supergirl Radio.
Yeah!